Hello and welcome back to Bicyclelegs Talks Music and favorite albums of the year. It's time to look at our top 10 favorite albums from 2025. And can you please welcome to the channel, probably the most special guest I've ever had so far on the channel. It's my son, Max. Max, thanks so much for doing this. This is going to be so much fun.
My pleasure, Dad. Making me feel like a celebrity.
And just so my viewers know, not only is Max my son, he is also the maker of the hats. So
That I
all
am.
of all the hats except my original black hat were crocheted by Max. So let's get straight into it. I don't know about you, Max, but I think 2025's been a hell of a year for new releases.
Yes, it's been crazy. I have struggled to keep up with all of it. I still have a list of albums that I haven't listened to yet, but my list
Mm,
of albums I liked and loved this year is like well over 40. So it's been a big, big music year.
yeah. And yeah, it's been a big music year for me too. Maybe not quite that big, but there's been a lot of great albums and there's a lot that I've had to relegate to honorable mentions here that in any other year would probably be making my top 10 quite easily. So, yeah, let's get straight into it and start with our number 10. Max, what is your number 10 album of the year?
So my number 10 spot actually just recently changed, pretty last minute. Um, my number 10 is a late edition this year. It is The Passionate Ones by Nourished by Time. This is a new artist for me. I know that he has one or two albums before this that I haven't gotten around to yet. That's how new this is for me. I think this was an August release, but I didn't get around to it until like late November. Um, I think if I'd had more time with this album, it might have jumped a spot or two. But um, I love the atmosphere of this album. It's very, it's one of those albums. There's a few albums on my list that I struggle to place in genre because a lot of stuff gets grouped into like alternative like pop, electronic. There's elements of a lot of things, pop, rock, electronic, generally alternative. It is hard to describe in the realm of genre, but there is a really strong atmosphere in this album. I love how much it dances around. There is this really cool interlude in the middle of the album called Cult Interlude. And that is just, it has a very scary, creepy energy to it. It's got this like spoken word about cults in the background that's spliced up. And then straight from that, the album jumps right into maybe the most like upbeat kind of poppy song on the album. So that kind of gives you a picture of how much this album plays around. There's a few of those sort of albums on my list, which will become apparent. But yeah, it's a hard one to describe, but I really like it. I don't know how much it would be in the realm of a lot of your viewers' tastes, but because it's quite modern, but I think there are like influences in there that other people could get into. You just have to have an open mind, which I'm sure a lot of you do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got me intrigued, so I'll be checking that one out for sure. Um, And yeah, look, I have a small audience, but I have a quite varied audience. So we get a lot of different people on the channel here, and they're into all sorts of music. So yeah, I would definitely recommend my audience to check out all of Max's choices as well as mine. My number 10, probably again in another year, would probably be a top five album, but as it is, it's just sneaking into my top 10. And it's the
Wow.
first of a couple of albums that I've got here with lenticular covers. So the album
Ooh,
is Mad by Sparks, and you can see the
nice.
lenticular cover there. This is a really good album. I think I actually like this one better than the last one, which was The Girl Who's Crying in Her Latte. Um, and I saw them on that tour, and they were absolutely wonderful. You saw them as well when we went to the festival
Yep,
in Adelaide,
yep,
and they were great on stage. But this one, I mean, the lead off track before this album came out, the first sort of teaser single was the first song on the album, which is called Do Things My Own Way, which has got a bit of a Devo feel to it, which I think is rather cool. Um, but there's a lot of, Sparks have done a lot of different styles of music over 50 plus years. And a little bit of everything is kind of uh, showing off on this album. You've got some of the early sort of art rock sort of feel to a song like A Little Bit of Light Banter, which is, again, a really, really good song. You get some of the more sort of staccato, repetitive things that they were doing around about the time of uh, Little Beethoven with something like Don't Dog It. It's got that bit of that repetitiveness, but it's also got that orchestral feel that that album had. And yeah, I mean, it's got the pop, it's got some of the heavier rock as well. It's yeah, it's a really, really good album. And they've been going since the early 70s, Sparks. This is in the UK, believe it or not, now their highest ever charting album. It got to number two on the UK album chart.
wow.
So that is my number 10, Sparks with Mad. And I'm looking forward to seeing, the way they've been going lately, they'll have a new album out in a couple of years. So um, they're still going strong, despite the fact that Russell is 77 and Ron is 80 now. So yeah, they're doing great. But it's a really good album. If you're a
Wow.
Sparks fan and you haven't checked this album out, definitely do. I think there's a lot to really, really like if you're a Sparks fan on this album.
Yeah, I need to hear it. It's a great cover as well. I really like that.
Yeah,
I've got to say, it's a very surprising to see Sparks as your number 10. That really says
yeah.
something about
Well, it
the
says
amount of
something about
music
the
this
rest of
year.
my top 10. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So, your number nine, Max.
So my number nine, and I do have a physical copy for this one, thankfully, is Private Music by Deftones, which I love this cover. Simple but
Yeah,
very bold. Um, this album has such a perfect opening to me. They I don't think they do anything really out of the box for their sound. They're very consistent to that Deftones alternative metal sound, but it is not dull to say the least. I think this is a really it's a more accessible album for them compared to some of their more popular, like well-known albums. They don't go quite as uh screamy as they can on some other albums. Deftones was one of those artists that I kind of had to ease into. Like I couldn't get into some of their heavier stuff at first until I really started to love the band. So I feel like this is a really honestly a good starting place potentially for people wanting to
yep.
get into Deftones. It has a great opener. It just gets straight to the point. It's punchy, but at the same time, they do utilize their kind of classic highs and lows musically. Deftones love to go intense and loud, but they love to be quiet and slow on other songs as well. I always appreciate that about an album, especially heavier albums that give you like a palate cleanser in a way. Um, I feel like it really honors the more intense stuff as well as the quieter stuff. Um, I love songs like Milk of the Madonna on this album. Um, really, really good production on this album, maybe better than other albums. Not that I can be the be the voice on that subject, but yeah. I think this is a really, really solid album from them. And like I said, potentially a really good starting place for people who haven't really explored Deftones before.
Yeah, no, great choice. I mean, they're a band that I've known about and I've heard a little bit of, but I've never really dived into the catalog. But it sounds to me, Max, like your journey with Deftones is very similar to my journey with the band Opeth, in
Yeah.
that,
I thought
like,
you were going to say that. Yeah.
I first got into Opeth when Michael Ackerfeld dropped the Death Growls.
Yeah.
And I got into those albums and really, really loved them. And then later on, I started to get some of the earlier albums and started to appreciate them. I'm still not a big death growls guy or harsh vocals guy, but I learned to love them, at least on the Opeth
Yeah.
albums. So yeah, no. Great
Yeah.
choice. And I'm sure
I think
I'm sure that's one that a lot of my viewers will be getting into too.
yeah. Yeah. I feel like Deftones is maybe a band of mixed opinions in terms of people who love metal because they are more on that alternative metal side. They are a newer sound in some ways. But yeah, I think compared to like, say, one of their more famous albums, like Around the Fur, there are some intense songs on that album that I like now, but when I was first starting to listen to Deftones, they were too much for me at first.
Yeah.
So I think private music doesn't have that kind of
Mm,
end of the spectrum quite as much. But I think it gives you a still really, really strong picture of their sound in general. So for people who
yeah.
aren't into Deftones but want to listen to them, try this new album.
Excellent. Well, my number nine is much like your number 10, Max, in that it's a late entry for me. This album only came out on the 21st of November, so I haven't had very much time to spend with it at all. I've only listened to it like 3 or 4 times, but I knew it had to be in this top 10 the first time I listened to it. And again, like your number 10, I think the more I listened to it, the more it might have ended up going up a little bit in the ranking. And the album is The Archaeoptimist by Spock's Beard, one of my favorite bands of all time. This is a different Spock's Beard in as much as this album, unlike any other Spock's Beard album, musically is being driven by their keyboard player Ryo Okamoto. And he's co-written the music for every song on this album. Whereas on previous albums, he might have gotten one or two co-writes, and that was about it. So he's very much the driving force behind this album. And it's definitely an album that recalls some of the earliest Spock's Beard sound, back when Neil Morse was still in the band. Neil Morse, keep that name in mind. There will be more about him coming up. Um, but this is the current Spock's Beard lineup. You've got Ted Leonard on lead vocal and guitar, Alan Morse, who's Neil's brother, on guitar and vocal, Ryo Okamoto on keyboards, Dave Meros on bass, and their brand new drummer, Nick Potters. And this is progressive rock. It's unashamedly progressive rock. Um, the standout track on this album is the big 21-minute epic, which is the title track, The Archaeoptimist. Um, on vinyl, it actually gets split over two sides of vinyl. Most of it is on one side, and then the ending of it is on the next side. But there's other really great tracks here, including there's a track on here called A Four Thoughts. And it's kind of a hark back to other earlier Spock's Beard songs. Because the very first Spock's Beard album I ever got was their second album, which is called Beware of Darkness. And on that, there is a song simply called Thoughts. And then on my favorite Spock's Beard album, which is called Five, there's a song called Thoughts Part Two. And they've done a couple of other Thoughts songs in this sort of series. But Thoughts Part Two was a very important song for me, Max, because I had the a DVD of the making of that album five, and when they were writing the song Thoughts Part Two, Neil Morse kept describing that song as their Gentle Giant song. And that's what made me explore the band Gentle Giant because I'd never heard of them before. So, and this song has that kind of, you know how Gentle Giant, because you know Gentle Giant well. You know how a lot of their songs they'll have these sort of like several sort of counterpart vocals all doing different things and weaving in
Yeah.
together and really complex. Well, you get that on a Four Thoughts on this album. So because I mean Ted Leonard is the lead vocalist, but Alan Moore sings, Nick Potters sings as well, and they all blend their vocals together and all doing these different lines at the same time, and it's absolutely magical. If you're a Spock's Beard fan, but you haven't been so much into the most sort of last three, four albums, give this one a go because I think there's a lot on here that you're gonna like. It's definitely my number nine, and as I say, if I'd given it a few more listens, it might have gone up a spot or two as well. But it's a really, really great album. Highly, highly recommended.
Wow. Yeah, I'm interested in that in Thoughts Part Two and
Yeah.
all of those. When you compare them to Gentle Giant, I mean, prog rock has not always been my genre, as you know, but I have
Hmm.
appreciated a lot of what I've grown up with because of you. But as you know, Gentle Giant is definitely the standout for me. So my ears
Yeah.
prick up when you say stuff like that.
All right. What is your number eight, Max?
So my number eight is maybe a contentious one for me, as I'll explain. But it is Breach by 21 Pilots.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to appreciate how nice this digipack is because we don't get enough
Yeah.
nice CD packaging these days. Um, but this is actually one that I struggled to admit was going to be on my top 10 because this is a band that I loved when I was 13, 14, 15. Uh, and then I kind of fell out of listening to them over the years. I didn't really follow their kind of last couple albums before this one, but I really wasn't expecting to find my way back to them this year. But this album, especially when compared to the last two, and I know some people love those albums still, but I really feel like they have found their footing again. Um, the album before Breach, Clancy from 2024, definitely has some interesting ideas. There are songs that I like on that album, but it felt like they stumbled through it a fair bit. That album is good, but not great. And I really feel like they found their way back to their sound on this album. I would really recommend it to anyone who likes their old classic albums, Blurry Face and Trench. Trench was 2018, and I feel like that was the last time they were this strong. Um, so it's been a little while. But I kind of struggled to admit that I loved this album and was playing it so much this year because they are a very uh, unique, identifiable sound. And they're very modern. And I think it was kind of hard to not feel shame over liking music that could definitely be described by some people as angsty.
Hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, I think, as people say, cringe is dead. And we should just enjoy what we enjoy. And I think it's a great thing that they have such a specific sound. It really scratches a particular itch for me. And I absolutely love their production. I think it's so strong on this album again. To some people's taste, maybe it's overproduced. To me, it's just so luscious and satisfying. There's just so many layers, and that is something that I am always drawn to in music. Um, there's some really great like highs and lows on this album as well. Like they're punchy from the beginning, but the song that really ended up being my favorite was Cottonwood, which is a very quiet, melancholy song. But to me, it's like everything it needed to be. So yeah, an unexpected one for my list this year.
Yeah. No, no. Look, I mean, I still love the music I listened to as a kid,
Yeah,
so there's no shame in loving the music that you grew up with and all that sort of thing. And especially, it's always lovely when a band that you loved when you were a kid puts out an album when you're an adult and it's really good.
yeah.
So,
It's
so
wonderful. Like, yeah, I love when something that spoke to you at an earlier time in life speaks to you again in a new way.
yeah, no, that's brilliant. My number eight, I think, Max, is going to be the album out of all of these that if you were to listen to them, you would like the least. Um, because this is not just progressive rock, but it's kind of granddaddy progressive rock in that there's an epic to beat all epics on this album. And it is also it's a super group, so it's a like established musicians, and it's a super group of Christian progressive rock. And it's a one-off album. It's called Cosmic Cathedral, and the album is called Deep Water. The band is Cosmic Cathedral. This is the Neil Morse album that I was talking about. On this album, he works with legendary Christian musician Phil Keaggy, who's like, he's a hell of a guitar player. Forget about his faith or anything like that. That man can play guitar like few others on this planet. Byron House is the bass player. I'd never really heard of him before this album, but apparently he's well known around the music biz. And then the drummer is a legendary drummer, a guy called Chester Thompson. He's played with Frank Zappa. He's played with Genesis. He toured with Genesis for like a couple of decades, playing drums while Phil went out the front to sing. Um, and they do this absolute, this is just like full on progressive rock. The first track on it is called The Heart of Life. It's 13 and a half minutes long. It's great. It's kind of bit jazz fusiony. So you might actually not mind that one so much because it's got a bit of a jazz fusiony feel to it. Then you get some shorter songs, Time to Fly, I Won't Make It, and Walking in Daylight. I mean, I say Walking in Daylight, I say shorter songs. Walking in Daylight's still 9 minutes long. But I mean, the other two are sort of 6 minutes and 4 minutes. So they're shorter songs by comparison. And then we get the Deep Water Suite, which is the title track on the album. Again, it's split over two sides of vinyl, but this time it really needs to be because it's 38 minutes long.
Wow.
It's split into 9 parts, but it flows like one piece. And it's just like the epic to beat all epics. I mean, I've got longer songs in my collection and that sort of thing, but this is just, and it's got all those Neil Morse hallmarks that my viewers, if they're sort of fans of Spock's Beard and Neil Morse's solo stuff and whatever, Transatlantic, that all that sort of thing. It's got all those beautiful melodies. It's got all those wonderful time changes, time signature changes, just wonderful complex playing, but it never gets sort of overly knotty. It never gets overly like it's not hard to listen to. Even though it's complex music, it's still relatively fresh on the ears, I think. That's kind of a hallmark of what Neil Morse has done over the years. So this is the proggiest album. And I mean, I've got a couple more really proggy albums to come in my top 10, but this is the proggiest of the prog. Deep Water by Cosmic Cathedral. Again, for my viewers, if you're a Neil Morse fan, you haven't checked this album out, you absolutely must. It's right up there with some of his very, very best work. So
Beautiful cover too.
yeah, yeah, I like it. I think I've got a couple more albums. I think the next album you're going to love the cover of this one. But
Awesome.
yeah. All right, we're up to number seven.
Alrighty. So you will know my number seven. I mean, you won't know that it's number seven, but you will know this album. And you have this one, but I don't. My number seven is Possession by Ty Segall. Um, this is an early favorite for this year. I think this was the second one of my top 10 that made it, that I could tell was going to be one of my favorites at the very least, from the beginning. I love Ty's sounds. It feels like a real blend of music that I grew up loving, both older bands and more like 2000s bands. I feel like it's a blend of like the Beatles and the Black Keys for me. Um, I really, I really love the title track. That is one of my favorite songs of the year. If you want to get a glimpse of the album, but you don't want to try the whole album, listen to that song at the very least. Uh, and if you love that song, listen to the whole thing because it is a 10 out of 10 album for me. I think it is exactly what it needed to be. It feels like the thing that I really love about this album is I feel like he balances a really classy mix of having a consistent sound while also having like tonal shifts enough throughout the album that you don't get bored. You never feel like you're listening to the same song for the whole album.
Yeah.
You still really feel each song, but they just work perfectly together. This is really the sort of music that I feel like I can put on at any time and it will suit most moods. Like a lot of music that I love is not always the sort of music I can put on at any time. This is really, it has a warm personality, but it's not so in your face, you know? And I love music that's in my face, but I also love music like this that's classic, it's warm, it's perfect for a drive, it's perfect for doing things at home. It's just a really classic sounding album to me.
Yeah. And all I'm going to say about that album at this stage is, and if I'm going to quote my good friend Martin Popoff here, more on that later.
Yes.
So, my number seven is a band that's new to me this year. This is the first album of theirs that I've listened to, and much like that number 10 of yours, um, it's a band that I'm going to have to go and dive into and get more of their albums over the year. And I think you'll like this album cover as well. The band is called Gazpacho, as in the soup, and the album is called Magic 8 Ball.
Nice. Yeah, I like that.
Now, how would you describe this album? Some people call it progressive rock. I disagree. I think it's more sort of art rock. It doesn't have the sort of chopsmanship and complexity that a lot of progressive rock has, but it definitely has, the songs are not super long, but they're long enough that they can explore a little bit. They're definitely more into, rather than sort of playing a million notes a minute, this is about creating atmospheres and and taking you on little journeys and that sort of thing. So it's a bit art rock, it's a bit psychedelic in that respect. I think you might like this one actually, Max, because it definitely has a more modern sounding production to it. It doesn't sound, it's not like you know, take Cosmic Cathedral. That album is definitely trying to sound like, the 1970s and all that sort of thing. This isn't. This is trying to sound 2020s. But it has that kind of production, especially on the drums. The drums have that more modern production on them. And I really like that about it. The vocals are lovely too. They're a Norwegian band, but they sing in English. Um, yeah, you get 8 tracks all up on the album. it really is. That cover is a really good indication of what you're going to get musically, if that makes any sense. You know, it's going to leave you in that sort of a those reddy greeny kind of hues. And yeah, it's been one of my favorite discoveries. I didn't include this on my recent show where I talked about bands that I've only just started getting into this year. Only because I knew A, that I was going to talk about them here, and B, I've only listened to the one album, whereas the other bands I've sort of listened to multiple albums of. So, but they're definitely a band I'm going to be looking at getting some more of the back catalogue of and getting into. But yeah, I reckon that's something, there's stuff on there I think you'd really get into. So yeah, that's my number seven.
Awesome. I gotta say, you make me sound like I don't like old music, saying that I
Mm,
might like the modern production, which I do. I
yeah.
mean, my own list is definitely reflective of my own age, but I do love a lot of old music, and
Oh
but I
yeah.
am very interested. I love that cover, and when you say that
Yeah.
the cover really reflects the music, I love that. I always love a cover that goes really well with the music.
Yeah. And I've got to say too, this was another fairly late addition to my list because this only came out on the 31st of October. So it came out on
Wow,
Halloween. But
awesome.
yeah. Whereas the rest of my list I've had for a little bit longer. So again, this one could have maybe gone up a notch or two if I'd had a bit more time to spend with it. But and I've got to
Hmm.
shout out, there is a guy who follows me and I follow him on Twitter, an Indian fellow by the name of Arun, and he's the one who really pointed me towards this album. So thank you, Arun. Really appreciate it because this was an absolutely great album.
Awesome. Nice.
All right, you're number
Alrighty.
six.
My number six is a very beloved band of mine. It is Double Infinity by Big Thief. Now, this album has been out for a little while. I can't remember when exactly it came out in the year, but it's been a while. But it actually took me longer to develop a proper relationship with this album. It honestly only happened more recently. But that isn't to say that this isn't a strong album. It's more a comment on how special this band is to me and how their albums end up kind of transcending into the special little category for me of like music that isn't just great music. It's music that really soothes me and helps me through emotional times. It's the sort of music that I put on when I can't really handle most other music. Um, it's a beautiful, beautiful album. It feels like they diverged a bit from their sound. It was a little less folky than their past album, which is not a bad thing. But they're very folk, kind of alternative country in a way, which is funny for me because I'm not really a big country fan. But there are bands like Big Thief that are really kind of they play with those alternative country sounds, and I just love the atmosphere that they build. This is really, I feel like there's a really strong atmosphere and consistency on this album that is maybe, I think that's what's really different about this album compared to their other ones. Um,
Yeah.
like I said, I think it's more modern than the sort of very strong folk sound on their last album. And I love the sound of that last album. It probably still is my favorite. That's a hard album to top for me, but I do love the sound on this album, especially the song No Fear is just gorgeous. It's really simple in a way because Adrian Lenker just repeats the same four lines for the whole song. And this is like a song that's nearly 7 minutes, I think. But it doesn't it doesn't drone on. It's beautiful.
Mm.
It builds on top of itself. And she is my favorite lyricist in the world, I think. I just love how she writes about the earth and about people in a really kind of mystical way, but also really personal way, and not in a way that feels like it's trying to take the piss, if that
Mm.
makes any sense. But yeah, just I will be surprised if a new Big Thief album is ever not on my top 10 list of that year. So not a surprising one for me.
No. I mean, of all the bands that you're probably going to talk about today, they're one of the ones I know better because you've played me a lot of their stuff when you were living here.
Yeah,
You'd always put your Spotify on when you were cooking and stuff, and there'd always be some Big Thief. And I always
yeah,
quite liked it. So again, a band I probably need to make a bit of a deeper dive into. So,
yeah,
um, but that song you're talking about that has the four lines just repeated. Um, Again, it reminds me of a song by Sparks. And you would have seen them do this song when we saw them in Adelaide. They did a song called My Baby's Taking Me Home.
yeah,
And apart from a spoken word part in the middle of that song, that is the only lyric in the song is My Baby's Taking Me Home. And he sings it over and over and over again. But again, it doesn't get repetitive or boring. It builds and it builds and it builds until it just gets this absolute climax of him singing "My Baby's Taking Me Home." And so, yeah, I was sort of thinking of that when you were talking about that song.
yeah. She does that a few times on this album actually, where she's repetitive on a few songs, but it really means something. It doesn't feel like it's simple in like a creatively lacking way. It
Mm.
feels like the simplicity is the point of it, which
Yeah.
I love. She always feels very intentional, but it also feels like they're always going with the flow as well.
Or or the other song, this one you might know better. The Beatles. I want you, she's so heavy.
Yeah,
You know, that lyric, I want you so bad. Um, but again, it's repetitive, but it really builds up and gives you the feels. And
yeah,
and in that particular case, it's a kind of, almost desperation of the feeling that John had when he wrote that song. So yeah, great choice and definitely one of the ones on your list that I'm going to have to check out and have a bit more of a
yeah.
listen to. My number six is a solo album by a guy who has been in a number of bands over the years, but he's most known probably to most of my viewers as having been the second guitar player and lead singer in the most recent version of King Crimson. And that is a fella by the name of Jacko Jaksic, or on this album he actually calls himself Jacko M. Jaksic. I assume so that we don't confuse him with any other Jacko Jaksics. I'm stealing that joke from Spinal Tap, so forgive me. Um, and this album is called Son of Glenn. Now, if you're expecting sort of, an album that's going to sound a bit King Crimson-y and that sort of thing, you're not going to get that on this album. This doesn't have that knottiness and that, harshness and that sort of kick buttness that a lot of King Crimson has, because King Crimson were a progressive band, but they often almost veered into progressive metal a lot of the time, and especially in their later works. And you don't get that with this at all. This is an art rock album. This is a singer-songwriter album. It's basically a concept album of Jacko talking about searching for his birth parents because he was adopted. Um, and he found his mother, but his father was a guy named Glenn. By the time he found out who his father was already deceased. His father was actually a US uh, military man during the Second World War. Um, and Yeah, he was stationed in England. No, it would have been after the Second World War because he's not that quite that old. But he was stationed in the UK, had an affair with the woman who became Jacko's mum, and then Jacko was given up for adoption. He was adopted by two Polish immigrants to the UK. Um, so yeah, it's a really interesting, fascinating album. The music is great. There's a lot of wonderful guitar playing because Jacko is a great guitar player. He didn't get to show that often in King Crimson because he was very much the number two guitar player to Robert Fripp, obviously, in King Crimson. And he was mostly there to be the lead vocalist. But here he gets to shine in all those talents. He gets to play guitars and keyboards, and he writes all the songs himself, and it tells a lovely story, and and it ends up being a bit of a love story because he ends up meeting the lady that's on that cover there. So um, it's got a bit of melancholy to it as well. It's and there's a couple of short instrumental parts where you get a little bit of the progginess. In particular, there's a little sort of 2 minute instrumental called "Get a Proper Job." Um, and he gets a little bit proggy with that one, but a lot of it is more about, again, atmospheres and telling stories, and it's just a really, really good album. And Jacko's got a great voice, definitely worth checking out. Um, Again, I was a little late to this album. This came out in June, on 27th of June to be precise, but I bought it like 2 or 3 months later, and it's a really, really good album. It's well worth checking out.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the ones on your list so far that piques my interest the most. I really love albums that are very personal to the artist,
Mm.
and very story centric in a way. It sounds like a beautiful album.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely lovely. And as I say, but it sounds nothing like Crimson. But the thing is, Jacko was in Crimson for a while, but much earlier in his career, he played guitar for a little while in Level 42. So
Wow.
much different style of music than Crimson. So it just gives you an idea of what the breadth of his sort of musical knowledge and influences and that sort of thing is too. So
Yeah, that's
all
awesome.
right, we're into the top five now. So we're talking absolute cream of the crop now. What is
Yes.
your number five?
Alrighty, so my number five is another new artist for me. It's a debut from an artist as well. The album is Neverything by Tiberius B, which is an artist that I was introduced to because of Hayley Williams posting about this artist online. And man, am I grateful for that because I love this album. It is just ridiculous to me how tiny this artist still is. Um, because this album is just such a demonstration of musical skill. It's really, it's in that real sound that has been popular in recent years, that is heavily influenced by like early 2000s and 90s alternative music, sort of like I would say maybe some shoegaze influence, alternative rock from the 90s and the early 2000s. There's been a lot of that influencing music of the last few years, but this album is really one of the best examples of that to me.
Hmm.
And I have really enjoyed a lot of that sound from a number of artists, but Tiberius B, this is just a crazy debut. I mean, I think we can all expect a debut to often be a bit, uh, unpolished.
Mm.
And we can all forgive a debut album for being unpolished. But this is anything but. I mean, it's so layered, it's so casually skillful. Um, it's really, really distinct to me. I would really recommend this to anyone who loves music from the 90s and the 2000s. Um, but you're looking for new artists because the thing is, you can still tell that this is influenced by today. Um, this is just such an interesting album to me. It's such a experience. Um, and it's another one of those albums where there is a really consistent sound throughout the album, but it goes so many different places. It's a hard one for me to describe, but this is a fantastic new album, and I really hope that Tiberius B continues to make music because
Yeah.
what a debut.
Wow. Well, there you go. I've got to admit, early 90s alternative and that sort of thing is a genre that I'm getting into more recently because in the early 90s, I just wasn't in the headspace for what was happening in the music biz. I was getting into 70s music and all that sort of thing, and I just, kind of lost interest. I've told the story before where it took me 20 years to get into Nirvana, because when Nirvana first came out, it just kind of passed me completely by. So that one kind of piques my interest too. So I'll be interested to have a bit of a listen to that. Sounds really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of album that can bridge people into newer music. I think it's
Yeah,
one that I think is friendly to uh some older and newer audiences. So yeah.
yeah. Well, my number five is an artist that you and I, Max, are both going to be seeing live in the new year. Um,
Yes.
Although we're going to be seeing him separately. You're going to be seeing him in Adelaide. I'm going to be seeing him in Brisbane. It's my other lenticular cover as well, because I went for the
Yes.
the deluxe edition for this one. And that is Who is the Sky by
Awesome.
David Byrne. I've really been enjoying this album a lot. I love that cover too. It's just like the most colorful thing I think I've got in my whole record
Yeah.
collection. Um, this is a really varied album. It's and it kind of shows a way forward for David Byrne, but he's also looking back a little bit, not so much into the Talking Head stuff, but into like his early solo career. You may not know this, but his early solo career, he was experimenting quite a lot with like South American music and salsa and stuff like that. And he
Yeah.
kind of goes into that quite a bit on a few of these songs. This album is recorded with an orchestra. It's got a couple of collaborations. The first song, obviously, Everybody Laughs, features St. Vincent, who he's done a whole album with in the past. And of course, the song that you know and love, What is the Reason for It, featuring Hayley Williams from Paramore. So
Yes.
those two have become really good friends lately. So,
Yeah, it fills my heart.
um, but this is a really great album. I think it's one of the best things he's done in his solo career, and certainly in recent times. Probably my favorite before this was an album called Feelings, and that was back in 1997, I think. Um, which might still be my favorite of his solo works. And that one includes the song Wicked Little Doll, which I think I've sent you before, Max, which is a collaboration with Mark Mothersbaugh and Jerry Casale from Devo. But yeah, this is a wonderful album. It's not one of those albums that's front loaded either. It's not like all the really good songs are in the first three or four songs. I love some of the songs right in the middle of this album. Songs like I Met the Buddha at a Downtown Party, which again shows that sort of wry sense of humor that David Byrne has. Don't Be Like That. I totally get that as a sort of a neurodivergent person, don't do this, don't do that, all that sort of thing. Moisturizing thing is hilarious, where he ends up, with the skin of a 3-year-old baby and all this sort of thing. But my favorite song is The Avant-Garde. I
Yeah.
love that song to death. It's got a bit of a new wavy feel, which again is not something that David Byrne's done much of lately. And again, it's kind of having a light-hearted poke at the avant-garde. Um, he even sings the line in the chorus, and it doesn't mean shit. It's the avant-garde, which I think is kind of great because it reminds me of John Lennon was apparently once quoted as saying that avant-garde was the French word for bullshit. Which is funny because he ended up doing his fair share of avant-garde music with Yoko. So, but no, this is a great album. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with it live in concert and what he does with a whole bunch of other songs because when he plays live, he does a bunch of Talking Head songs, but he often reinterprets them and does them quite differently from the way they were on the original records. So that's always fun because I've seen him a couple of times in concert before and he's always great. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that. He's really a dream artist for me to see live that I didn't think I maybe ever would get to. So it's really exciting. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it looks as well, because as you know, he has really gotten interested in the like stage kind of production of it all. I mean, not that that was new. We all know it stopped making sense, but it's kind of become more of a focus maybe in more recent
Yeah.
years for him with like American Utopia. Um, and from the clips that I've seen, it just looks great. So I'm so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. No, movement has been part of his stage show for quite a while now. And
Yeah,
um
of
and
course.
movement and choreography and all this sort of thing. It's been a huge thing for him. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's going to be a great show and this is a really great album. I was really, really pleased that this album turned out as well. Because I liked the American Utopia album quite a bit, but I like this one a lot better. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I will say it was an album that I warmed up to with time, which isn't to say that I didn't like it the first time. I just wasn't as moved by it as I kind of hoped to be at first.
mhm.
So for anyone who's maybe listened to it and wasn't really captured by it, I would say give it a few more listens because I think it's something that uh kind of adds onto itself the more you listen to it. And man, that orchestra is just fabulous on that album.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great. Well said. What's your number four?
My number four is one of the other ones that you would know of. Um, and it is one of two that I have as a record. And that is The Crux by Joe. Um, Man, this is a cathartic album to me. It's really, again, I made a comment about this earlier, but I do love albums that are very personal to an artist. I love emotional vulnerability, um, when it's paired beautifully with passion for the music that an artist is making. Um, I think it's a really satisfying, like, musical experience and story from start to finish. It feels very intentional, like the ordering of the songs. Um, I mean, it plays great out of order as well, but it's one that's really worth sitting down and listening to from start to finish because it'll tell a story of grappling with the end of a long relationship for this artist and uh, how friendship and family really carried him through. And, I love those themes of just relearning who you are after a big shift in your life. And that is a big, big theme on this album. Um, I really think he is becoming one of the great artists of this genre of, well, I wouldn't say genre, but he's becoming one of the greats in terms of artists that are very clearly influenced by older sounds, but that just demonstrate absolute skill in and of themselves. He really doesn't shy away from his influences, his very strong like 70s and 80s influence. I would say more he's definitely more on the rock side on this album, whereas Decide, his last album, was more on that electronic sort of new wave sound, synth pop. Um, this album, I feel like he plays around with genre more than he has before on his past two albums, um, in terms of like how much he plays around on this on the one album. Um, but that being said, it still really has a distinct sound. It felt like he was really going for creating a classic album. And I think he did say that in an interview. I love that you can tell that this man is an actor as well because it feels like he's playing a different character on all three of his albums. Um, I would really, really strongly recommend for people who love old music like The Police, so many like artists, classic artists from the 80s, um, and the 70s, but you want to play with more modern music because I think this album is a really great place to start. It is not the kind of insulting parody music that some people try to inauthentically play with old genres. And I think you can really tell on this album how much he just loves those old classic artists from the 80s and 70s. But he
Yeah.
really has a skill of his own.
Yeah. No. Look, spoiling a little bit from my honorables, that was probably my number 11.
Yeah,
If we were doing a top 11 instead of a top 10, that would have been
yeah,
in there. So I really, really love that album a lot. Um, but yeah, I mean, all three of his albums are great. And as you know, I just told you recently, I introduced my best mate Grant to Joe because he's a big Stranger Things fan and he
yeah,
started listening to it and really enjoying it. So we're getting the word out there slowly but surely to some of the oldies like me that
yeah.
there's some good new music out there. Speaking of which, my number four, Ty Segall, Possession.
Hey,
And I have
awesome.
you to thank for this album. And I will absolutely echo everything you said about the title track because that's the song you sent to me and said, "Hey, Dad, go and have a listen to this." I
Yep.
listened to it and I then instantly went and played the whole rest of the album. So, um, yeah, it's just absolutely wonderful. Um, Shoplifter is a great opening track too. I really, really like that. Um, but there's lots of really good songs on here. Alive's another one I really, really like. So I won't add too much more to it because I think you kind of covered it really, really well. But yeah, definitely some Beatles influences. I know you probably won't recognize it because they're not really a band you listen to, but I definitely hear some Stones on here as well. 70s Stones in particular. And maybe even a little bit of Kinks, you know, late 60s,
Yep.
early 70s Kinks. But yeah, he makes it his own. It definitely has a more modern production than those bands do. It sounds great. It's a wonderful listen. It's really well produced record. Um, so yeah, that's my number four. All thanks to you. So
My pleasure. I'm very happy about that.
yeah. All right, number three.
Alrighty, my number three is one that maybe you and other people very close to me would be surprised to see at three rather than maybe higher. But three is still very high, and like I said, many, many, many great albums this year. But my number three is the unexpected release from Hayley Williams this year, her third solo album, and that is Ego Death at a Bachelorette Party, which is a double album. It is a long one. It is 20 songs long. She had a lot to say. And this was one of the most unique and personalized music releases that I've seen from an artist because she initially dropped most of this album as just audio files on a website. Um, and there was a lot of detail went into this process, more than I can explain here, but it was just so exciting. It was such an exciting kind of demonstration of her regaining her like creative liberty and her voice after the Paramore 20-year contract ended with Atlantic Records. And this album, it is full of rage and sadness, but it is done in such a fun and noisy and uh, mixed in terms of genre. Uh, it really, really feels like she's stretching out her muscles artistically. Um, you can really hear how much she loves music of all sorts on this album because she plays around with so much genre, alternative rock, um, very modern pop in some ways, modern R&B in some moments. A lot of that, like I was talking about with the Tiberius B album, a lot of that old like 90s alternative rock. Um, Honestly, there's some like Smashing Pumpkins on their softer side in moments of this album. There's so much. There's so much on this album. Um, and she didn't even intend to make an album in the first place. So the really, really exciting part about her releasing this album was that she opened the cards up to her fans and said, "Help me make a track list for this album because I don't know what the track list is." Um, so yeah, big release for her. It is surprising for me that this is only number three. Um, I think she went so many great places on this album. There's a couple songs that don't work as well for my tastes, but it's 20 songs and they go so many places. So I can't fault her for that. And it's not an issue of the quality of music. It just comes down to personal taste. It's a really, really exciting moment for her creatively, and I can't wait to see what she does next after this.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. Much like you, I think my number three, people are going to expect me to have had higher. But funnily enough, until fairly recently, I probably had it a little bit lower even than number three in my list. Uh, and then last month in November, I saw this artist play this album in its entirety live in concert, and it really made it sort of really woke it up for me. And that is The Overview by Stephen Wilson. I bet there's a lot of people that would have picked this for my number one. But
Yeah.
I as I say, I probably when this album first came out, I thought this album is two epics, so it's like two side-long tracks. You have Objects Outlive Us, which is 23 minutes long on side A, and then you have The Overview, the title track on side B, which is about 18 minutes long. And when I first got this album, I thought Objects Outlive Us was wonderful, absolutely outstanding. And I thought the overview was okay. It wasn't bad. I mean, I don't think I could ever think anything Stephen Wilson did was bad because I'm just much like you're a big Hayley Williams fanboy. I'm a huge Stephen Wilson fanboy, always have been, ever since I first heard In Absentia by Porcupine Tree, which would have been 2002, I think. Um, but I wasn't overly sold by the overview by side B of this record. Side A, though, absolutely wonderful. Um, and including, I don't know if you know this, Max, but each of these sidelong epics again is broken up into sections. And the third section of Objects Outlive Us on side A is something called Objects Meanwhile. And the lyrics for that song were actually written by Andy Partridge.
Wow. I think you did tell me about that at some point, and
Hmm.
yeah, I love to see that.
And the rest of the album is completely written by Steven Wilson. You know, he plays a bunch of the instruments. But seeing this live, the overview worked for me a lot better in a live context. And then I went back and listened to the album because I've been listening to all of these albums in the car, trying to make up my top 10 and sort of settle on a final ranking and all that sort of thing. And yeah, the side B, the overview, definitely has gelled for me a lot better since I saw it live in concert. So is this my favorite uh, Steven Wilson album? No. But is it still a really, really damn good album? Absolutely. It's definitely for people who weren't very happy with his last couple of albums because he was getting more into electronic music and pop and, which has always been part of his oeuvre, by the way. People think that Steven Wilson equals Porcupine Tree, and they forget that he's also done a band called No Man, which was very much a sort of arty pop band. And, he's done all sorts of other things as well. He's done multiple projects. He's done IEM, that was basically a krautrock project, and, all these sorts of things. So, for the people who didn't like the electronic stuff so much, they're probably going to get into this better. I really loved those last couple of Steven Wilson albums, but I love this too. And if you do like the electronic stuff, you get quite a bit of that on the overview, the track on side B. So it's definitely a more electronic sort of thing, whereas side A, Objects Outlive Us, is more sort of progressive rock, space rock, that sort of thing. So, and just so that people know too, the whole concept of this album is what they call the overview effect. I don't know if you know about that, Max, but the
I don't
overview
think so.
effect is basically something that happens to people when they go into space and they see the Earth from orbit or from space. And a lot of people who do that the first time, it really changes their perspective about the world and that sort of thing. And
Yeah,
that's what the overview effect is, and that's basically what the theme of this album is.
awesome.
So yeah, that's my number three.
I love a good theme like that, and that's such a theme that I just know works well for music.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, number two. We're getting right to the tippy top now.
Yes, awesome. So my number two, I really wanted to have a physical copy here today, but it did not make it here in time. But hopefully the album can speak for itself. It does have an incredible cover, which I wish I could show you myself. But my number two is You're Weird Now by Gorilla Toss. This is one of my most anticipated albums from a pretty small artist. And man, are they weird, but in my perfect way. Um, I feel like they are really like they're just the perfect music for me as someone who grew up as a weird kid that liked weird music because of your influence. Um, they have I feel like they're good for anyone who is open to newer music that loves artists like Devo on stuff like Jerkin Back and Forth is one that I feel like I can hear in this album. Um, or even stuff like Stranglers, sorry. Um, stuff like Nuclear Device. Um, I feel like if you love music like that and you're open to hearing it in a new way, you need to try this band and you need to try this album because I feel like they are just, they exude skill and personality. They're a fresh take on the melding of so many genres like punk, new wave, um, electronic of so many different breeds. Um, their vocalist is so unique, so punchy. Probably not everyone's taste, I will say, but I love a vocalist like that. I love a distinct sound. Um, I will say, like, this for me is like dream music. It's definitely not everyone's taste, but if you loved new wave growing up, if you loved weird stuff, experimental stuff, try Gorilla Toss. Try this album because I think it's their best production yet. Um, it might be my favorite of their albums. It is just fantastic. It opens with a punch and it keeps punching the whole time. It's fabulous. My favorite song on the album is probably CEO of Personal and Pleasure. And every song on this album will give you a weird title and a weird set of lyrics, and it'll be a fabulous ride if you're open to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sold. I mean, seriously, I'm gonna go and have a listen to that album probably in the next day or two because it just sounds like it's
Yeah.
so up my alley. It's not funny. And
Yes.
same for
Out
my
of any of
viewers, you
my
know.
yeah, out of any of my top 10, I think that would be the one I recommend the most to you and probably a chunk of your audience, depending on tastes. Yeah,
Yeah, no, well, there's a fair bit of my audience who are here for the new wave content, and
awesome. That's
they'll
my people.
definitely. So there you go. Go and check out Gorilla Toss. That's
Yeah.
a recommendation from both of us now.
And that is gorilla not in the animal sense, but more in the war
No,
sense.
yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I'll have titles up on the screen
Yeah,
and all that anyway for these, so people will be able to
no
see that.
worries.
But speaking of weird, my number two,
Yes.
probably going to be the last ever album by this band. It is in many ways a posthumous album because the main guy by this band died 5 years ago and was incapacitated about 17 years ago. They're a band I've only finally gotten into this year, and I have become like an uber fan of this band almost instantly. The band is Cardiacs. The album is LSD. It is a double album. It's a big chunky boy. Comes in a like slipcase and everything. Um, 17 songs on this album. And I mean, for the people who aren't really familiar with Cardiacs, how do you describe this band? They are just really, really bizarre. They have either influences of or have influenced themselves artists like Frank Zappa, Oingo Boingo, Madness. Um, there's parts that are almost metallic, like as in metal. Um, there's bits of it that are almost like circus music or carnival music. Um, it's all very, very strange. But this album was being recorded when their leader, Tim Smith, had a heart attack not long after, just after going to a concert. And he had a stroke while he was in hospital as well. And it led to him with a condition called dystonia, which left him mostly paralyzed and unable to speak. They were in the middle of making this album at the time. They tried to keep working on it with Tim sort of pointing at a letterboard to spell out words, to finish lyrics and all this, and to tell them what to put on the album and all this sort of thing. It was torturous work. And then, unfortunately, Tim had another heart attack and lost his life in 2020. And his brother Jim, yeah, Tim and Jim Smith. I don't think his parents thought that one out, but he went and finished the album with a bunch of sort of friends and colleagues and all that sort of thing. And this is the result. Is this album here? And my favorite song on the album is one I sent you, Max. Is a song called "Wouldn't I?" which I definitely, in the middle of that song especially, hear a big Oingo Boingo influence on. Um, but there's so much great music on this album, and it's just absolutely it. This album is an assault, of just how much information you get in a relatively short space of time with all of these songs. There's so much happening with the guitars, with the keyboards, with the vocals. Now, obviously, Tim Smith only managed to sing about half a dozen of these songs before he was incapacitated. So what they did was they got a bunch of other vocalists, and like a lot of these songs are kind of gang vocals. Like there'll be four or five people sort of all singing in unison, and it creates a great sort of atmosphere for the album. So, talk about sort of making a virtue out of a vice, as it were. They managed to really finish these songs off well, and I think Tim would be absolutely proud of this album. If you're into Cardiacs, this is an absolutely great album. If you're not into Cardiacs, I would not necessarily recommend this as the place to start just because it's so much. It's nearly an hour and a half long. It's just absolutely huge. I would probably recommend one of their earlier albums might be a little more listener friendly for the uninitiated. Just by means of only having half as much music that this album has. But I love, love, love this album to death. And ask me on another day, it might even be my number one. So yeah,
Yeah, that is definitely the artist out of this list that I really need to get into more because, yeah, they very much appeal to me as well with your influence growing up. But wow, that really sounds like a huge a labor of love and also a love letter to Tim Smith. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Your number one album of 2025. I am looking forward to seeing this.
So my number one is interesting because it's an artist that earlier in my life I definitely wouldn't have been able to get into, I don't think. They are a sound that would not have been in my tastes even 3, 4 years ago. But I guess it is a real reflection of my evolving music taste as I grow older. My number one of the year is Turnstile with Never Enough. Now,
Hmm.
this is my number one album of the year, and I still think that their last album from 2021, Glow On, is actually my favorite. But it is hard because they're two fantastic albums. Um, this album just it's it's a real demonstration of how much they're interested in, I guess, pushing the envelope and doing something beyond an album because they did a like a movie to go with this that is like a giant music video in a way. And it is visually beautiful. You can watch chunks of it as music videos for different songs on their YouTube channel. Um, and it's just a lovely thing to add to the absolute like atmosphere of this album. This is one of those albums that the first time I listened to it, I put my headphones on and I just sat and did nothing else, which I do sometimes, but is not as common for me as it is for you. Um, but I was so glad to have done that with this album because it was just I let the experience attack me and man, does it attack you at times. They are punchy, they are angry. This is hardcore music. This is like alternative punk music. They are the first artist in history, I believe, to be nominated for the Grammys in three different genres in the same year.
Mm.
They're nominated in metal, alternative, and the other one is escaping me. But it is a real testament to how much they play with sound. Um, like I said, hardcore was really not the sort of music that I ever would have imagined myself being into. But Turnstile really has their own thing. This album, talk about highs and lows, like like nothing else. This album is loud and then it is so slow and atmospheric and mystical in moments. And they complement each other so, so well. It really, like I said earlier, it's like a palate cleanser that serves both ends of the spectrum of this album. Um, I love the song Light Design on this album. It has a little uh, electronic intro that slams right into like nasty guitars. And I just love that about them. They are not interested in sticking to a genre. They're interested in whatever sounds interest them. And it serves to create such a personality. And I love this album. It is an experience that is worth sitting and listening to and just letting it attack you.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense. So I'll definitely have to give that a listen and see what it is you're sort of getting from it. I mean, again, not one of my huge genres. I love punk, but
Yeah.
hardcore not so much. But
Yeah.
I'd definitely be interested to check it out just to see what it is that you're getting from it because it sounds interesting.
I will just say, like I said, I still don't know. I love Turnstile, and I still don't know if I would say that I'm interested in much hardcore music. But
Mm.
Turnstile is its own entity, and I love that it is like a gateway for people in this current age to get into genres like hardcore and punk.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's an unexpected one for me too.
excellent. Well, I do have to say, my number one probably couldn't be much more different from your number one,
Yes.
because my number one is pure progressive rock. Um, it's an album that I actually did a review of with Davey Cretan and Todd Evans over on Cretan Classics. It's all the way back from 28th of March, so I've had a long time to really get to know this album well, and it is Dominion by IQ. This is classic IQ. It leads off with like a full-blown 20 odd minute epic called The Unknown Door. It then follows that with like a tiny little 2 minute track called One of Us, which probably only has two of the band members on it out of five. Um, No Dominion is absolutely wonderful. It's as close as we get to an actual title track. Far From Here is great, and then it closes out with the absolutely sumptuous Neverland. And that is two words. It's not Neverland as in, from the
Peter Pan.
never, yeah, exactly, or
Yeah.
Neverland Ranch I was thinking of, but it's Neverland. So I won't go too detailed into it simply because I've done a huge review of it over on Cretan Classics, which I will leave a link to in the description, and people can check that out. What I will say though, and this is something I've noticed on the last two or three IQ albums, Peter Nichols, the lead singer, he would be in his 60s by now. And normally, when singers are getting to that age, they're starting to lose a little bit. They're losing a little bit of that high range, or they're losing a little bit of that timbre or whatever. Peter Nichols sounds better than he ever has on this record. It's quite
Wow.
incredible how good he sounds on this record. It's just his best vocal performance ever on this album. And the rest of the band absolutely kick it as well. I mean, Mike Holmes is sort of the musical genius behind the band. He's the guitar player, but he writes all the music as well, plays a little bit of keyboards as well. But the rest of the band are absolutely fabulous, fabulous players as well. Todd went so far as to say that this is now his favorite IQ album. which, considering their first album came out in 1983, that's no mean feat. It's
Yeah.
definitely it would definitely be a top five IQ album for me, if not a top three. So absolutely wonderful. If you're a prog rock fan and for any reason you haven't listened to that album already, please do check it out. So that is our top 10. Well, very quickly, if
Nice.
you've got any honorable mentions.
Yeah, I'll rattle through some. Um,
Yeah.
I just want to mention Forever How Long by Black Country New Road. That could have been number 11 or 10 for me. Achilles, Kevin Atwater, uh, Equus Caballus. I never know how to pronounce that, but one of the new albums by Men I Trust. Alfredo 2 by Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist. Uh, Probably the best rap album of the year to me. It's a Beautiful Place by Water From Your Eyes. Face Down in the Garden by Tennis, their last album. Um, Instant Holograms on Metal Film by Stereolab. Love that one. Got around to it late. Headlights by Alex G. And Hallucinating Love by Maribor State. That's all I'll give. That's a lot of names.
Yep. Yep. No, that's great. I'll just very quickly rattle through these two. I've got six that I put. I wanted to narrow it down to five, but I just couldn't in the end. It had to be
There's
six.
so many.
Um, Friend of All Creatures by Pattern Seeking Animals. Absolutely wonderful. Again, if you're into Spock's Beard, there's a couple of Spock's Beard guys on this album, so check it out. It's been a great year for prog. There's a lot of prog in my honorable mentions as well, including this one, Car Mechanic with Transmutation, Swedish band. Really, really good. Has a bit of a jazz fusiony feel in certain parts of it too, but if you're into your really naughty, super, uh, you know, prog that has all the bells and whistles, that's the way to go. Jethro Tull, Curious Ruminant, very much not a prog album. This is a folk rock album. So,
Nice.
Jethro Tull really were only a prog band for a few years. Most of the time, they were a bluesy, folky, hard rock band. This is very much in the folk area, and it's absolutely wonderful. Uh, Ian Anderson's voice is not what it once was, but he makes good use of what he still has. Surprised you didn't mention this one. I still like this album quite a bit, although the band's albums were in my top 10 the last 2 years. Till the Morning by Brian
Yeah,
Daddario.
yeah. Yeah,
I really
definitely could
like
have
this
been on
album
my
a lot,
list.
but
Yeah.
it's not quite as good as those last two Lemon Twigs albums, I don't think, but it's still very good. Um, you already mentioned this one, The Crux by Joe. This is probably my number 11. Definitely my new wave fans and what have you, check this out because, yeah, everything Max said about this is 100% correct. Great album. And then the last one I wanted to point out is a local band. They're actually from Butterham, just up a bit north of Brisbane, up near the Glasshouse Mountains. And this is a debut album by a progressive rock act, and it is called Ambient Den. And again, this is if you're into Pink Floyd and that sort of thing, this has got lots of Floydy sort of overtones to it. And this is another concept album. It is about going to another planet and terraforming it into somewhere that humans can live. So,
Awesome.
so those are my honorable mentions. And that is our favorite albums of 2025. Max, thank you so much for coming on the channel. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've been wanting to have you on the channel for ages. And when you actually suggested to me that we do this, I jumped on it because I knew it was going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I hope I offered interesting things for your viewers. I've definitely gained a whole new level of respect for what you do here because you are so good at it. And I felt like I was stumbling my way through, but hopefully my list was of interest to some people here.
Oh no, it was absolutely wonderful. And Max and I are already talking about doing another show in the new year. So keep an eye out for that because that's going to be a lot of fun too. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted. So if you want to see some of my other favorite albums of the year shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my studio albums ranked shows, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, like Cretan Classics, where I did the IQ review, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page and bicyclelegs merch. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.